Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Code Remix Weekly. I'm your regular host, Tim, and not with me this week is Sam, who's still out. He's always going to be out next week, so I'll be taking you through everything that is new in OpenRewrite all by myself this week. And as a couple of updates we have for the past week is the new release, of course, that we did last Wednesday. As a fun fact, I did this one from DevNexus in Atlanta by the booth. We were running the release for folks eager to try things new. We could tell them that we did it right there and then. There's a couple of new things that have made it in. One is that we now have a bunch of recipes specifically for GitLab. So if you're looking to apply some best practices to your pipelines there, then we have some recipes for you. We've also added some new recipes for logging best practices, where we previously already had some recipes to improve the make sure that you use the first argument as a string. Now we also do that if you were using message.format or string.format. So look out for those if you want to apply them or apply the best practices that now contain those as well. We also have some further new recipes specific for the users of Lombok. So if you were to want to fully adopt the Lombok annotations to create your constructors, we now have recipes to help you there, also hooked into the best practices recipes. And then some further smaller changes and fixes to some various testing and Spring related recipes. But that is not all. This is just the new recipes for you to trial. There has already been some substantial improvements to the Python support as well, which has made it into that particular release. If you're looking to write new recipes in Python, you can now do so with the fstring template. And beyond that, you'll see that we also added some new migration recipes for Angular, for Node.js, and then the logging specific recipes that I mentioned earlier. So if you want to try that out, there's a new patch release 8.75.3, I think it's the latest version right now. We might just be following that up today or tomorrow with a new release, but these are already available to you all, so have fun with it. Then looking ahead, we also have some new exciting things. So there's a new webinar coming up next week. I will have panelists from both Netflix, Airbnb, and LinkedIn joining our own Jonathan Schneider for a discussion on automated code changes at scale, which, of course, we have our own thoughts on, but it's very nice to be able to share that stage with friends of ours who are similarly going to help inform you on how to achieve that. If you want to join that webinar, then you only have to subscribe, and I'll share the link in the chat right now. So it is on March 18th, so 1 week from now, and then hope to see you all there. Now also on March 18th, next week, we'll have a guest on here on the show. And for that, we're going to look at how Choice Hotels does their Java modernization. So join me and Brian, I believe, and of course our special guest, and then hope to see you there. And then lastly, we are going to do a new training next week. And there, again, you can sign up for the advanced training. Did I say next week? I meant in 2 weeks, on Tuesday. That'll be on March 24th. And then, yeah, of course, we hope to see you there and teach you all about the more advanced patterns when it comes to OpenRewrite recipe authoring. So we'll be looking at traits and other data tables and those kind of topics. So hope to see you there. So then that is it in terms of updates for the past week. And then, of course, this week we're going to look at the third and final installment of the better assertions that we've been going through. So with that, I'm going to share a different tab with you all, and I'll put it up. And I'll do the entire window. And then if all is well, you're looking at the workshop that we have. So the past 2 editions, we've been taking you through a example repository that we have, but we also have a workshop that ties in with that same example. And what we're going to do for this week is we're going to take you through a couple of quick examples of adopting AssertJ and the features that it has and why we think it's the best choice you have available for your assertions today. And then from there, you can explore these topics on your own. There's some exercises that I won't take you through this week, but that you can try out for yourself. So if you're eager to follow along, I'll share the link in the chat right now. And then from there, you should be able to view the workshop and work through these as well. But like I said, I'll be narrating as we go through just why I think that this is the better choice for you all to write your assertions going forward, and of course how you can automate the adoption of these assertions as well. So first up, we have just a quick refresher of why I think it's important to use AssertJ over the other choices that we've seen over the past weeks. And that is because it is just a lot more expressive when your tests fail. And it's also going to make some of the assertions that you do unnecessary, such as in this case when you are doing an assertion on a list. It is very common to maybe first check that it is null or not null, and then do a check on equals to avoid this null pointer exception that you would get if it were null. But when you use AssertJ, then there's no need to have that duplicate check. You can just pass in the list itself, and you'll get those very handy suggestions to, in this case, call the hasSize method on that list, and that will imply that it is not null as well. So small improvements, but taken together, it's going to be very helpful to see those completions in your IDE and not have to write those unnecessary assertions first to avoid the null pointer exception. And then what you get when you run these is that you also get much improved failure messages. So in this case, if we were to run this one where we have a list with 3 elements, and then we do a size check on expecting 4 elements, then this is going to give you the not very helpful expected 3, but was 4, and you have no idea what the 4th element might have been, or what the missing element was in some cases. And then if you compare that to what you get with AssertJ, you get a much more improved message. In this case saying, I expected a collection of size 4, but it was 3, and the actual elements were exactly these. And that then allows you to typically immediately jump back to your main code, as opposed to having to set a breakpoint to figure out what was going on here. And that is a benefit not just for you as a developer. This also means that when you use agentic tools that are going to inner loop, write recipes and run recipes, adjust your main code, that they will have a much better message to work from to allow it to deduce exactly what's going on. Because if you, again, compared it to what we had before, expected 3 was 4, that is going to be not very helpful. You're going to see those agents introduce print statements and then remove them again, starting to run your test repeatedly, whereas this type of message is just a lot more informative. So small improvements on the face of it, but in reality it's going to make it such that you can do much faster as you develop these types of tests and the source code that goes along with them. So then beyond that, we can also have some type-specific assertions. So we already saw this somewhat implied with our list that we saw previously. But if you take this to the extreme here, you can see that previously with JUnit, but also with testng and others, you typically only get some of these primitives to do your assertions with, checking if something is true or false, or equal or not equal, or null or not null. Whereas with AssertJ, you can have a lot more expressive assertions instead. So in this case, saying that you're asserting that a collection is not empty, has a certain size, contains certain elements, doesn't contain other elements, starts with, etc., etc. So all of these methods are available for you and they're very discoverable just from typing a dot in your IDE and then get the rest of this method name proposed to you, just because it's able to work out the type that you're working with, and from there the assertions that you can do on those types. So a lot more expressive as compared to manually extracting these elements or calling these awkward kind of contains all assertions that you really don't want to be doing in that way. So then beyond that, we also have these types of patterns where you see folks manually start to write streams and all match, any match, non-match to then pass them into assert true. And of course, if this was false for some reason, you would get the unhelpful expected true but was false. Whereas if we switch that over to using AssertJ, then you get a lot better assertion and error messages, but just from what we see here, passing in just the condition that you had into a method that is made to give you a helpful message if this were ever not the case. So a lot of helpful patterns there. And this extends to other types as well. So if you're working with dates or with files or maps or strings, each of those will come with their own specifics to allow you to write assertions. So in this case, again, checking that a date is within a certain range is very easily read in this case, where you have a date that is after, before, or has a certain year, as compared to what you would get with just that silliness of doing it manually with JUnit. And this expressiveness, again, is why I like using AssertJ. Now, we've also previously already discussed that you can do chained assertions. So in this case, you have a number of different assertions on a list of books. And this then means that when the first one fails, you'll only see that one. And it's not always clear that all of this contains the same books, unless you look at this a bit slanted to see that all of them have the same prefix. Whereas if you start to introduce those chained assertions, this reads very clearly that we can have a collection of books within a certain size and also contains these particular ones and doesn't contain this one. Or if you know your way around AssertJ a bit better, you can also use this contains exactly, which implies the size of 3 and implies that it doesn't contain any other books. So just using this one assertion here is going to make it a lot more readable as compared to all of these that we saw previously. So know that expressiveness is going to help you, again, when these fail, to make it very clear that you were expecting a collection containing exactly these 3 elements, but you got a collection containing any number of other elements. So then, moving on, there's also ways for you to do like multiple assertions on a single element, as we see here, where you have a list and it contains these 3 elements. You can combine that in one go to say that it should contain each of these 3 elements. So just collapsing these from knowing that it should contain each of these, you get a single one instead, and the improved failure messages were this not the case. We also have ways for you to be more precise when it comes to your assertions. So this is building upon the previous example where we said should be containing each of these 3. But you can also have assertions that are going to go a bit beyond just this instance, where you can say that it contains exactly these 3 elements, or exactly in any order these 3 elements. And these types of assertions are just a bit more expressive in what they want you to verify, and they're going to then, if you see this one, tell you exactly that you were expecting these 3 elements and no more, no less, as opposed to the previous one where the contains might be a remnant from calling that previously on the list itself. So keep those in mind. There's some specific ones, and it helps to know when to kill which one when you want to do these assertions. And then that again implies that you can drop some certain constraints here, where again, if you know that it should only contain these 3 elements, then there is that dedicated method. It contains exactly in any order, and you can drop the needless assertions that you see right here. So keep that in mind as you go through. Even if you're already using AssertJ, probably there's small ways in which you can improve the way that you write your assertions, by saying that the order doesn't matter or that duplicates are allowed in this case. And all of them have slightly different semantics, but they're very discoverable and will tell you exactly which to use when. So then, moving on, if you now think, I would like to try this out, I would like to run a recipe to create my own usage of any assertion library onto using AssertJ, then we have an exercise to do specifically that. So what we recommend is that you open this one, and then on your own projects, typically it's just a single command that you can run to upgrade your applications. So if you're using Maven, you'll be taken to this particular page. If you go to the command line option, you copy and paste this command right here, and that then allows you to run that recipe locally as a one-off command that would allow you to migrate onto AssertJ, and then apply further improvements for AssertJ if you're already using it. So this is, I think, a very helpful way to get you over that adoption hump, and then from there be able to continue with writing AssertJ assertions only. And once, of course, you've migrated yourself, you also want to educate your colleagues. So for that, we have a way where you can encourage usage by running the recipes that we have automatically on pull requests. So if that is of interest to you, then we have workflows documented right here, where you can, anytime someone opens a PR, run the recipes that we have to suggest improvements. And if they find any potential improvements, post a small comment on that pull request to make sure that you see those improvements applied as well. So it's a very nifty trick that we have, and we've been using it for a long time on the Open Rewrite repositories, such that you'd stop new issues coming in, and you don't have to be the one to point these things out to your maybe more junior colleagues or your more senior colleagues stuck in their old ways, where you can automatically suggest the improvements to them. So it's a very helpful pattern, and know that it's available to you all. Now there's also some very small new additions to AssertJ. So this one came out, I think, not more than 6 months ago, where if you sometimes have these types of helper methods, where you both want to do an assertion on an object that you pass in, as well as return the object that was passed in. This is a pattern that we use a lot within Open Rewrite. Then there is now a helpful method that is called actual, where you can call this one at the end of a chain of assertions to be passed back this particular instance that you passed in. And this is very helpful when this is not a variable, but maybe say a method invocation, and you want to be sure that at the end of the chain you actually hand it back. And this is then now covered as well by calling that actual and then give you back that instance. So we find that very helpful to shorten some of the validations that we do in, let's say, a consumer or an operator that we use, and then give that instance back. Now, if you want to try this out as an exercise, then we have that as well. You can clone this GitHub repository, and from there work through this discount calculator that we have to maybe manually migrate this, or automate that one and see if you came up to the same results. But I won't take you through that today. I trust that you are able to work through that on your own if you wish to do so. Because I want to spend the remainder of this call taking you through some of the more advanced topics for AssertJ, which I myself even wasn't fully aware of when I started looking into this topic about a year ago. But there is some very nifty things if you look just beyond what's available out of the box towards the things that will help you write assertions very specific to your organization. Or where you can maybe verify a number of different properties at the same time, as opposed to failing on the first one and having to continue debugging from there. So for that, we're going to go through the advanced topics here, and you can already glance at the topics coming up. And the first one is then extracting properties from a, in this case, a list of books. So a lot of the examples that we use are using a bundle of books, which contains a list of books. And then typically you will find that folks will do this type of manual wrangling. If you want to do assertions on titles, they will automatically reach for streams and then extract elements and map those to a list to then do the assertions. But that is a bit silly, because you can do this more effectively with AssertJ itself, but just passing in that collection of books, say extracting or flat extracting, which is coming up as well. And then say, I want to assert that for all of these books, these are exactly the 3 titles that I expect. So it's a very concise way of doing that kind of wrangling. If you find yourself calling awkward methods like get element at index 0 or get first, know that AssertJ often has methods to allow this kind of, allow you to inline these types of calls to just an assertion method with extracting or dot first and things like that. Now you can also do that when you want to extract multiple different elements. So in this case, we see that we're doing assertions on the title, the author, and the year. And you can similarly do that by, in this case, like I said, you have to get the element at index 0, but you can also call the assert that books first, extracting these 3 fields, contains exactly these 3 values. So you can start to see how this makes it very easy for you to just focus your tests on the assertions that you want to do and not do any of the plumbing necessary to get these elements out, because I think this type of pattern is going to be very widespread for folks, whereas seeing it in this way is going to allow you to immediately at a glance see what the elements are and what the values are that you're expecting in this way. And just these small methods like first and last those are already helpful for you to be able to get that element out of a collection where you know there's only a single element or at least a first element that you're asserting on. So then beyond that, we also have this kind of thing where we have assertions on a list of books where we're doing those within a for loop. This again can be improved by looking at the extracting here and then passing in a tuple of values that you expect. So this tuple is coming from the assertions.tuple import that you see here, where you can now see that you can use that same pattern that we used on the first book, but now use it on a collection of books to say that you're expecting exactly these 3 values in this particular order. So then that again helps remove this silly kind of for loop that we see, but just saying that you want to get these ones and then use the tuples to do your assertions. Now I already alluded to it earlier, when you have this kind of assertions where you get the authors for a bundle of books, this can also be improved by looking at, in this case, getting a list of bundles, and then for those bundles get all the authors, and then for those assert that they contain these exact values. And this is doing that extraction and then flattening of a collection, which in this case helps you again avoid some of the unpacking that we see right here. And then finally, you can combine all of this with the chaining that we saw earlier to again allow you to do these types of assertions. But there is a small bit here where you see that as instance of, and this is necessary because of some type erasure that we have in Java. And it's a bit unfortunate, but it does mean that you can still use this particular pattern. It's just that this is necessary as an intermediate to allow you to do exactly this. I see someone is posting a test comment in the chat. Know that your message is seen. It's just not something I can respond to right now. But if you do have a question, feel free to reach out and I'll read it as well. So then, looking beyond this, we're going to look at a recursive comparison. And this is one that was actually pointed out to me after I first gave a presentation in Barcelona last year, where someone said, well, you showed a lot of nice features, but I was actually missing one feature, which is going to be very helpful when you have two instances of the same type of object that you want to compare, but you don't want to compare them each individual field at a time. And for that, there is this very nifty using recursive comparison, and then the is equal to, and that has an optional field that you can call here, or method you can call here to say ignoring the field year. So in this case, we have two instances of what is essentially the same content in a book, but it comes in a hardcover and a paperback, and the only publishing year is different. And in this case, we can say we want these two instances to be absolutely equal, ignoring the particular year. And whilst we only have 3 fields here, typically if you work at, let's say, a large bank or a large insurance company, and you have a mortgage object with some 30 different fields, you can start to see how it's very easy to compare 2 instances, maybe the one that you got back from your calling your code versus the one that you've constructed within your test, and then recursively compare each individual field, also going deeper in that if there's a hierarchy, and then say ignore, let's say, my timestamp, or ignore my UUID, and still make sure that every other field then is equal without having to list again each of those fields and extract those fields and make sure that one to one they are the same going down. So it's a very helpful pattern to know that it's available to you, because quite often you already have something close to what you want to do, but you don't want to, like I said, have to compare as well any kind of timestamps, UUIDs. So ignore those, and then you're still able to check all the other fields very effectively in this way. So then, that's one way to compare different fields on 2 instances of a book. There is also another way that we have to assert that certain properties hold for a single object, and be notified which of those are holding versus which are failing. And we see that here where we can either have a fail fast or a fail at the end. And in this case, we have a book, and let's say that we're checking these properties one at a time. But say that the first one doesn't match what we were expecting, but the other ones could have matched. We're not quite sure. And in this case, we have a very helpful way for you to combine these three into a single assertion that we use here. So the assert softly. And I see a good friend of ours chime in, Sean. Good, great to see you here. So yeah, thanks for chiming in. And this soft assertions is one that I like, where you get this softly, and then you call on the assert that methods that we otherwise would have gotten already from a static import. And then you can check various properties for each of the things that they should be matching. And if this were to fail, you would see the combined error message for each of these three. So you would see if only the first one fails, that one failed, or if the other ones failed as well, you would see them as well. And in this case, of course, there's a slight typo here in the last name, and the year isn't even. So you would get an error message containing the combined exceptions that you get from each of these three, as opposed to, in this case, just failing on the first one and having to wonder, did I get back the wrong instance? Did I get back the right instance? But the first field was wrong. Whereas that summary is, again, allowing you to go much faster back into adjusting your main code, as opposed to setting breakpoints and figuring out what is going on. And again, not just you that benefits, but also your AI agents that allow you to then use that summary to immediately dive back into the actual fixes that you want to do. Now you can also use this with the custom soft assertions that we see here, where if we toggle this to the before and after, you see that we have a soft book assertions created ourselves, which extends a class that you get from AssertJ, where you can define some methods that allow you to check certain aspects of our books. So our title, our author, and our year. We can check, in this case, with that assert that softly, the title contains a certain word, the author contains, in this case, the last name, and the year contains, or is less than this particular year. And this allows you to, again, have a start to, let's say, a DSL that allows you to check various properties of your books very handily in one method, one invocation here, and get a summary of each of these, whether they pass or whether they fail. And then if they were to fail, then you would get the, in this case, in the old state, you would get just that first message, whereas in the latter case, you get this combined output of multiple failures, showing you for each of the fields exactly what went wrong. And this then, again, allows you to immediately spot that you're maybe getting back, like I said, the wrong instance of let's say, a group of 3 instances, and then drive back into your main code to say, maybe add some sorting and figure out that, how to make this stable. So this, I quite like. Soft assertions is a way for you to check multiple properties at once. There's also a slight alternative to this, which is the soft assertions, but let's see if we have it here. I had it earlier, so that is the satisfies. So that's a different way, which I don't think we have in this particular exercise, but there's another way to do mostly the same way, I think, but I'll continue on with what we have right here. So for the domain-specific assertions, we have a way for you to write custom assertion objects that make it very easy to check certain properties of your books. So in this case, we have, again, our title, our author, and our year, mostly like we saw with these soft assertions. But now I want to use them in a slightly different way, where I want to be more explicit that this is actually a title when it fails, and that this is an author when it fails, as opposed to a string that might or might not contain this particular instance. And the way we can do that is by writing a small book tester class. So this book tester, you'll see, changes the diff very subtly when we look left and right. But what we now get through this book tester is that we can call like a book tester, and then .title contains effective, or .author contains blog, and .year contains less than. And if these hold, these assertions, then it all is well. But if they fail, you'll get a very helpful message that says, I expected a book with a title that contains effective, but I actually got a different title. And that is going to, again, allow you to be very explicit, very intentful in the assertions that you write and the failure messages that you get back. And then if we look how we can achieve that, you'll notice here that we have this booktester.of, which we pass in a book. And then here we have our booktester class. And this is pretty much all you need to write these types of assertions. So this booktester is a class that I defined. It extends an abstract object assert that we get from AssertJ, and it implements the assert provider that we also get from AssertJ. Now the assert provider interface is very minimal. It just defines that you need to have a method called assertDat that returns an instance of the booktester in this case. So it's a very simple one to write. And then the abstract object assert is a class that we can extend. There's also an abstract string assert, there's an abstract collection assert, different kinds of classes that you can extend depending on what you're using. The abstract object assert is typically a good one to start with. And then we can define some of those methods that we want to use in our own chained assertions. So in this case, I'm using the title here and the author and the year to say that I want to call the regular assertDat book.getTitle, described as title, and then give you back the abstract string assert that you would get from this one to allow you to chain further assertions on the title itself. And those assertions that your IDE is going to complete is going to be anything that we can call for strings. Or in this case, for the year, we can do the same for integers. And again, looking back at just this small bit of boilerplate gives us this expressiveness when any of these were to fail. And we can do pretty much the same thing with other objects as well. So in this case, we've done it for books, but you can also use this for, you can generate these for different types of objects within your domain, such that if we take back look back at those mortgages where you had 30 different fields, this is going to help you write assertions that are going to be very clear to say, I'm looking at the title, the author, or the year, as opposed to a string that doesn't contain another string. So keep that in mind as you go through. And then at another topic, we'll look at how you can generate those assertions as well. So then you can use these subsequently in further matches that you want to do. So in this case, you can use the custom assertions that we defined to check that, in this case, you're going to check not that the title, like in this case, or the author or the year is used in this way, but maybe you want to say that your title should be exactly the effective Java string. And for that, we have a slightly different way to write your assertion, your book tester class. And we have that right here, where if you scroll a bit, you can see that we now have that same book tester. It still extends abstract object assert, still implements the assert provider. But we've added 3 different methods to it, such that you can now say that it should have exactly this title, as opposed to previously calling different assertion methods on the title that we got back, or the abstract string assert object that we got back. So this, again, a different way of achieving pretty much the same, allowing you to very easily do assertions on a title in your book, so that you can now chain these in this way to say that your book that we get back from that's passed into our book tester has a particular title, a particular author, and a particular year. So again, allowing you to chain these assertions very easily, allowing you to use this very effective way of checking domain-specific properties in your case. Now you can also use these book testers in checking collections. So in this case, we had a bundle of books again, and we can do verifications on those. But we can also call that booktester.of in a map here. And then we can, again, use our assertions with the year, in this case, to verify that it's between 2 different years. Or we can use the same when it comes to custom assertions here with satisfies, which was an alternative to soft assertions, where you can say that in this case, each of these previously would have been called in this way, again, manually extracting that title. But you can also use that book tester of, in this case, to say that these properties should all hold. So again, I think this is a very powerful way of extending AssertJ for your own domain. And I notice folks at Spring have also been doing this for the mock MVC test that they are using. So we'll be looking at that briefly as well. But this is something that I think is very helpful. And if you think that this is too much boilerplate to set up by yourself, then I have good news for you. You can also generate these assertion objects with a generator that they have at AssertJ. So in this case, we have this one I wrote manually once, but there's also a way for you to generate these just by pointing in a Maven plugin or a Gradle plugin at your package that you have here, or specific classes that you want to generate tester objects for, and that then allows you to use those directly one-to-one in your test. So if you are maybe using, let's say, a contract first approach where you already have all your DTOs or all your entities defined somewhere, and you want to switch to using these specific assertion objects for those, then just point that plugin at that package or at those classes, and you will get all of this generated for you, such that you don't necessarily have to do all of this by hand, and it will also be updated the next time that you generate your domain classes. So it's a very helpful pattern to have. And then, of course, once you want to adopt all of these assertions, then you can look towards recipes to allow you to pick those up as well. So we have some refaster recipes that we use ourselves a lot to make it easy to swap out the assertions that you have for the ones that you want to be using instead. And they make that adoption very easy. And then you get exactly this, where you have a generated book assert class, as opposed to the book tester that we had previously, and then see how that is being used much the same way as we saw previously. Now there is a bit of detail, and I'll just link this page at this point because I won't take you through all the configuration options. But it is possible for you to skip certain fields or change where they are generated, like all the goodness and richness that you have in configuration options. And then they also have an online generator that you can use as well. So if this is of interest, definitely look towards the AssertJ assertions generator, and then from there be able to start using the has name, has team, has teammates, all these kind of good ways for you to write domain-specific assertions with AssertJ. So then with that, there's an exercise attached to this, but again, I won't take you through that one in particular, but know that all of this is very easily available for you all to use. And I'll very briefly show you how the folks at Spring have used this in the Spring Framework 6.2 use of mock-MVC. And for that, I'm going to share a different screen. And I'll take you to my IDE. And of all as well, you're looking at the bundle controller that you see right here. So this is again the same domain that we have of books and bundles, and here we have an endpoint that previously you had to memorize a lot of these imports when you wanted to do assertions on a mock-MVC instance here, where in this case I was myself always confused, where do I get my status import from, where do I get the content JSON path in, and then for the request builders it's different again where they are coming from. And you would have to memorize these quite a bit to allow you to write these assertions. But the neat thing now is that they have used that same mechanism that I showed you all on how we can use the assertion provider interface to allow you to do chained assertions in Spring Framework assertions as well. So in this case, you can see we have them here with the static imports, but the one-to-one replacement is using AssertJ more effectively. So what they've done here is you have an assert that, which is just the stock assert that, which takes the assert provider interface as an argument. And then the URI method that they have defined here, that returns then an instance of that, what is it, an abstract mock-MVC request builder, which is itself a object B coming from this builder, which is that implements in the end that assertion provider interface. And that means that if you pass it in, you get back that instance, and that means that you get this very helpful content assist on all the assertions that are available on you for you as you write your assertions with mock-MVC. So it's not just me suggesting that you use this pattern. You can also use this now with Spring, And that means that you get this much improved way of running your assertions. And you can finally get rid of handcrest after like years and years of using this particular way. And of course, if you were to want to migrate automatically, then there is a recipe that we have as well. So we have that right here, which is available for folks using the Modern suite of recipes to allow you to automatically switch from the assertions that we have with mockMVC and the handcrest onto the mockMVC tester and AssertJ. So really helpful for folks that are looking to make that switch to know that there's recipes there to help you all. So then I see a quick question. I'm curious if you saw the recent paper from Alibaba about agents maintaining code, and if so, what are your thoughts? I didn't see the paper, but I do know that on our side, what we've seen is that a lot of agents that are going to help extend your code, and they're going to be helped by adopting, in this case, AssertJ, because they will get much better feedback the moment that your tests fail. So where previously we would see expected true, but it was false, now they would get a message like expected a collection of size 3, but I got a collection of size 4 containing these exact elements. And that, I think, is only going to help speed up and avoid needless reruns with like printed messages that then need to be removed and run again. That I think is going to be helpful. I definitely would be interested to see that paper from Alibaba. I know that they are using Open Rewrite just from the questions that we get in our open source Slack. So that is at least good. And then, of course, once in a while, I'll be fixing things specifically for, let's say, a Chinese language encoding that I definitely don't know myself, but I'm happy to help folks using the tools that we have in that way. So if you could send that article, it would be definitely interesting to read. But with that, I think we've gone through most of what I wanted to show you all today. So, of course, if you want to try this out, there is 2 workshops or exercises that we have attached to this. So this is, again, that link, and if you click on the GitHub link there, that will take you to the workshop that we have for this specifically, which is under Open Rewrite / Break Your Testing Habits. So that is then, I think, all I wanted to show you all. So unless there's further questions, then I want to thank you all for joining us this week. And I look forward to seeing you all next week when we'll have Stephen Chajcek on for discussing how Choice Hotels is rerunning their Java upgrade migrations. So until then, thanks all, and see you all soon. Cheers.